Yep, live now. And I think we can see our session. Thank you so much, John, for joining me today on Voice of Crypto. We have recently kicked off our really special series. It's called Voices of Web3, where we get some of the top guests from the crypto, Web3, and blockchain space. And today, we're really excited to have you on our podcast finally. And the topic of discussion is AI's impact on GameFi. But we're going to be talking about that and a lot more. Before that, I extend my warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Varuni. It's an honor to be here today. Been looking forward to it for a while as well. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Let me just kind of start off by introducing myself before we dive into the whole generative AI, Web3 gaming. I'm John Schneider. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Acxyn. And at Acxyn, we've been developing a solution to support game creators in maximizing the value that their game IP can achieve, and really be able to give back to the creators of this, of their IPs, using all the technologies that we can. And along Acxyn's way, we've had our fair share of support and traction that we've gained. So we're about 1.5 years old now, and 11 months. In January earlier this year, we got voted top Web3 startup in Malaysia. We've been very fortunate to kind of get some of that backing from the Malaysian government, working towards really enhancing the value proposition for gamer keys in line with the government and Malaysia's national agenda as well.
No, that was a really nice, short, and sweet introduction. But I think all my guests who join uh, or our guests at Voice of Crypto, there's one question that I always like to begin with to break the ice, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how did you enter the Web3 space? We didn't have Web3 when we were growing up. No comments on the age, but Web3 is a rather new concept, and so is GameFi. So, how did you
Mm-hmm.
move to this field? What led to the transition? And if you could
Um,
just
yeah.
map.
Well, I've always been somewhat of an entrepreneur. In Germany, I co-founded one of the first vegan patisseries, and at that point in time, I was looking at how we can enhance the value proposition of the business, integrate new business models, and I came across Web3 tokenization. And that I ended up meeting what would later on become a future colleague of mine, who had been pioneering some of the software development, tokenization, and especially security tokenization for real world assets, equity, and real estate. And I ended up, once I exited my previous company, I ended up working very closely with him and really getting a firsthand experience of what Web3 meant, the value proposition that it could bring, spent a lot of time working with him, advising other companies. And I guess, so that's kind of the professional story. I was looking for solutions. I came across Web3 and it instantly resonated. And I'm a learned economist. And as an entrepreneur, I instantly felt like this, once I really understood the concept of Web3, this would have a massive potential in the future for entrepreneurs, building companies, for the way you could design new platforms to engage with your customers. So I came into the space and it just resonated, and I knew I had to make this my mission.
Quite a mission you've got there, I must say. So, how long has it been in your entrepreneurship journey, and what all projects did you take up before Asyncs, if there were any? And what were some of the key highlights of this journey that you've had as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think really, every as an entrepreneur, especially with technology moving so fast nowadays, one of the most important components is that you're always learning and adopting, new insights, new ways of doing things, reflecting and improving. So I guess one of my real highlights in this entire journey has just been looking back at it, where I started to what we're doing now with Acxyn. It's always been about daring to dream a step bigger. It's been about tackling those challenges that are increasing as your confidence increases, as your experience increases, and then really finding the joy in being able to solve a problem for a lot of people, and at the same time reflect on that journey that you've kind of gone through as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, the things you've learned, the challenges you've had, the teams you've had the pleasure of working with. But yeah, it is a big, it is a big jump going from starting a food tech business to kind of going into Web3. But at the time, it was the same drive really that was behind it, because food tech, for me, it was a vegan food tech company. It had to do with health, and educating consumers about the benefits of health, providing them better alternatives. And the same it's really the same with Web3. We at Acxyn, we believe that this technology and AI is fundamentally going to change the way that businesses are built, that game IPs are built, and for game developers, we need to help them be able to adopt these technologies, and that's the mission now.
So, if we look at the sector, gamify, if you look at gaming as a sector, not just Web3, but also Web2, how big do you think the sector is, and where does Web3 gaming or gamify fit into that entire larger narrative? Also, what sort of a growth are you seeing for gamify in the next year?
Oh, I love that question, because a lot of what we do is look at the market. So to throw a couple of numbers your way, we're gaming as a whole right now, just game IPs and the revenue that that kind of market generates, what it's valued at is around $190 billion. So that makes gaming one of the strongest entertainment market in the space. So that's stronger than music, it's stronger than Hollywood and movies. Really, gaming is has benefited in the last 10 years hugely from changing demographics. Younger people are online more, people are getting access to the internet, to their phone, and we've seen a change in the type of games that have been developed. But those type of games, they've found resonance with a massive community. So I think gaming is really one of the biggest opportunities, and being able to solve core problems in this industry is, it's solving $190 billion problem. Now, to extend on your question, how does Web3 fit into that? I can't throw a number your way right now, what it's worth. I'd say a couple of B, but still mostly speculative. So Web3, powered by blockchain technology, has the benefit of being able to convey property rights. Now, those property rights, they can come in different shapes and forms for a business. And I think a lot of the game creators, they're still trying to figure out what is the best way to integrate Web3. So integrating Web3 in a game design actually brings quite a few challenges with it. But the benefits that come out of that integration are that you can really engage with your community on a different kind of level. So those property rights, if I reflect, and I think this is also one of my reasons for founding Acxyn and for working on what we're working on, is as a kid, I would love to collect, whether it was the Pokemon games that I would play, whether it was any type of cards, the cards, I would love to collect. And that kind of spirit of collection, that affinity that I had for these IPs and what I associated them with, good times with friends, being able to, oh, I've got the coolest new cards. Hey, maybe you want to trade me for these cards. I really grew up with that. So while the concept of Web3 is new, I think that underlying spirit of what it enables isn't new. I grew up trading. I grew up wanting to collect as many of the Pokemon or collect as many of the cards that I could have. And Web3, what it does is just it enables it on a global scale in real time. And I'm not just limited to my group of school friends. Now I can really follow my passions. I can become an expert in something that I love doing anyway, and I can own a little bit of that valuable IP. And I think that's really what Web3 gaming can bring to the gaming market. Now, has it been figured out? There isn't one particular, best practice that has been established yet. If we take that concept of you can now tokenize something and the market is already $190 billion big, and all of these valuable IPs that people have affinity with, and we can make them liquid, we can convey property rights. Our bet at Acxyn is that that is just going to accelerate what people have always been doing and what they naturally do and how they like to engage with their games. Yeah.
So, has what new stuff has Axon sort of experimented with in the gaming market? I'm sure that a lot of people are trying to do or produce a similar kind of product, or trying to acquire a similar market or communities. What different are you guys doing at your firm?
So we don't build games. We love the
Mhm.
gaming industry. We love games, but we're not building games. We we've really looked at the gaming industry. We work with a lot of game companies. We've partnered with around 60 game companies from this region, and we've been speaking to them, advising them on how they can integrate Web3. Now, one of the challenges that we've come up with is that Web3, as it stands now, blockchain technology, a lot of it is really speculative. And especially when you start financializing assets and IPs, a lot of that speculation kind of takes away from the core value proposition. It's great because it creates that liquidity, it creates attention, but really the market itself is we don't really have an understanding yet of what impact does Web3 have on game IPs, and how do we recognize when it's done right. So as a company, what we've done is, if I may say, I think it's pretty cool, but we've been working on a way to use artificial intelligence to collect some of that data that these game IPs create. So whether it's a stickiness and attraction, or whether it's more quantifiable, predictors like the income, the customer acquisition costs, and we've thrown them into an AI. And what that AI does is that it's capable of analyzing the entire market and giving us a clear understanding of what that value of that intellectual property is. So now, what this means for game creators is that you're going to be able to instantly and continuously access the value of the company and the IP that you're building. And as an investor, you're not gonna have to, wonder too much anymore. Hey, how do I look at this company and look at this company, and how do I differentiate between them? Which company is more valuable? Where should I potentially invest in? Now there's a framework. So what we've been working on is that framework to understand the economic momentum of game IPs and be able to quantify it, and be able to do that with a transparent framework to give everyone an understanding. Like, okay, you love this game, you can look at it. What's it worth? What's it worth investing in? And that's gonna, yeah.
Hmm.
I don't want to keep talking all too much, but maybe I'll give you an opportunity.
Yeah, you did briefly mention about how you guys are already making use of AI for to help game developers, and this, of course, hands them a lot of power in terms of assessing the market, the communities, or their customers. But what sort of future trends are you anticipating, which come from the convergence of these two technologies, blockchain and AI, especially for the gaming space?
So um, the way we look at it is that generative AI so far has been applied to helping game creators develop games faster. So I believe that most of us will already be familiar with AI like ChatGPT, but some of the other AIs that are currently kind of being positioned and created for the gaming industry, they relate around, creating the lore, creating the assets in game. It's all about helping game developers and lowering the barrier to entry for game developers to create new and upcoming IPs. So one of the major trends, I believe, is that we're going to continue to see that accelerate. We're going to continue to see generative AI being used in creating the next generation of games. And that could take different shapes. It could be new gameplay designs, levels that are only accessible to a certain person based on the way they interact or the Web3 assets they may hold, law that essentially changes automatically based on the decisions in the game you make, and it doesn't have to be written by a single person. So, in some way, generative AI is going to automate a lot of this industry, and it's going to it's already lowered the barrier to entry so much that an already very strong industry like gaming is going to attract a lot of newcomers into it, creating new types of games, which is wonderful. We want these experiences. As humans, I think it's undoubtedly that we want to be entertained. We want to have new worlds we can dive into. But for investors, it opens up another problem, which is how can you actually make the investment decision? How, with all of these games popping up, with all of these IPs, it begs the question of how do I try to stay ahead of it? How do I know that if I invest my money into this company, they're potentially using the same tools, this company is going to be worth the same or more in the future? Now that's where we come in, because we believe that all of these technologies, exponential technologies, they're going to continue accelerating the engagement, the type of realism that we have in games. And that's going to take place across the spectrum from Web2 games to Web3 games. And for investors out there, they're going to be a bit overwhelmed. So with us, what they're going to be able to do is actually just go to a website, click a game that they heard about. Maybe the kid is playing it, and they're thinking, oh, I want to I want to see what this IP is worth, and they'll be able to get that understanding. They'll be able to get those credible predictors that say, hey, based on these predictors, this is the current value, and this is what we believe it's going to be worth in the future. And the really cool thing that it does, AI, is that it compares it to the market. So it's not just a standalone, these are the predictors. This is my response. So most of the AIs, I believe, you'll ask a question and it will spit out an answer. But most of those AIs, they don't actually compare that answer for correctness. So a lot of these AIs, they can hallucinate. They can give you a well-sounding, a cool, a good answer that sounds good, but it might not be accurate. So what we've done is that our AI compares it. It compares it to existing games, existing IPs, and it is able to reference that. So you'll know, okay, if it predicts this value and this future value, it's because some of this historical data that other games in a similar, that have shown similar predictors, similar growth, similar user, sentiment. Now, all of these games are what flow into the decision making that our AI makes. So you have that transparency, you have that explainability. And I think that's going to become very important as a lot more of Web3, as a lot more of the games adopt, these technologies, whether it's AI or Web3, especially Web3, where more of the game IPs become financialized.
When we talk about generative AI, more often than not, it's portrayed in a bad light, and largely due to, let's say, if we imagine generative AI for game development. And I'm not an expert, but this could just be an example. Let's say we're using that for game development. Would it at some point lead to, a certain game not being unique enough, or repetitive stuff, or maybe just making it really difficult for investors to choose what sort of a game they would be investing in, or how would they benefit from it? So, I mean, we did speak about a lot of benefits and a lot of potential use cases that we see from the
Mhm.
intersection of these two techs. But are there any negatives? Are there any things that investors or entrepreneurs should be wary of, or could be roadblocks?
So I think with AI, it's really been a very disruptive technology. And as far as we can tell, there are two kind of stances on it. Most people want to slow it down. Other people want to say, hey, this is, the path really to solving a lot of the challenges. And what that means for gaming is that I think we're going to see, personally, I believe that we're also going to see a focus on game creators developing games without AI. So, there's always going to be that value proposition of, hey, this is a game with AI, and hey, this is a game that can do all these cool things, like, create new levels for you, new experiences within the game based on how you behave. But I think at the same time, we're going to see game creators decide they want to minimize the use or reduce it and keep it a human created project. And essentially, what that comes down to is that within gaming, the history of gaming has been linked to a very passionate fan base. It's been linked to people getting very engaged, very involved with the games that they're playing. And what generative AI does is that it gives game creators the opportunity to engage with the community differently. Maybe put even more of a focus on building a community, on getting them, interested in the story, their personal story, as well as the game story. And with the use of AI, it could be one of those tools to spend more time engaging and listening to the communities. Now, what could that mean for game creators? Well, the downside is that some of them might not have that experience, right? Some of them might not know, oh, I'm a game creator now, but now AI is doing everything for me. How do I become, like a cult leader, to say it, yeah. But how do I, actually engage with my community and build this IP, and really build a narrative and a story and attraction out of it? So when it comes to what are the downsides, the technology is early. From the way we see it, we work with numbers because we believe that numbers are what will help people make decisions. And if they have those numbers, and if they can see this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do, they'll be empowered. It'll be about empowering game creators, giving them more of that decision making, informed decision making capability. And then they'll be able to, hopefully build better IPs, make them more valuable, make people have more fun playing those games. So yeah, no, I think we're going to see some surprises for sure with AI. We're going to see some very cool things. Some things go wrong. But yeah.
Yeah, there are obviously positive and negatives to any new tech, and by the time we understand it, I'm sure it'll all get better. When we talk about Web3 gaming, John, we cannot not mention play to earn and how that particular segment sort of skyrocketed sometime towards the mid of last year. But where do we stand as an industry in terms of play to earn games? And there's been a lot of conversation around, is P2E dead? Will it make a comeback? Or how are we going to better integrate that into Web3, if at all? What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I would like to say that I think the industry as a whole has transitioned. We've transitioned from play to earn to play and earn, as well as potentially play and own. So, personally, and I guess we believe that, crypto does bring a lot of financialization into games, and we we believe that financialization for games is most valuable when it's directed at its intellectual property. So the tokenization of intellectual property doesn't necessarily have to coincide with those gameplay designs. And in this case, the earning potential of that intellectual property could be linked and should be linked to the way that the game is commercialized, the way, whether it's in a Netflix, whether it's, really being successful, or even, whether a community is creating content around it that in second order effects essentially increases the value. So from a business perspective, to us, leveraging intellectual property makes a lot of sense, has less downsides, and directs the value back to the intellectual property. Now, play and earn features. I'm super excited about it personally, and I believe that we'll eventually get there. But what I'm observing in the market is that these games that have the potential to fulfill that promise of being able to play and earn, um, they're evolving into more like we can liken them to emerging economies essentially. They're evolving into ever more complex economies. Now, I think if we look at games in Web 2, a lot of games have integrated the play and earn feature. They just haven't, made it as obvious as I guess some of the games in crypto have. Uh, I, I believe it was Dota. I believe Dota what they ended up doing is that they took a lot of the income that games generated and they would have events. They would have events where leading up to like the World Cup, they would release a battle pass. And that income that battle pass generated uh, resulted in the winning, and it became basically the prize money for the games competing, for the players competing. So the best players in the space had the opportunity to earn. They had an opportunity to really earn from what they love doing. So I think we've seen these experiments take place in Web 2 successfully without Web 3. Now, on a Web 3 side, personally, I believe we're going to kind of see it go two ways. The first way is we're going to see like obvious financialized games that are going to be very short-lived, have a lot of hype, and that's going to be the fun of it. That's going to be the fun of it. People are going to want to go in, compete, try to make as much as possible, even though the game might not be as engaging. And I think that's the exact reason, why we need, and sorry, the second aspect of that is that we're going to see games that move more slowly. Games like in Web 2, Eve and Second Life, they've had more or less the most robust in-game economies, and it's been going on for a long time. Now they have a very dedicated player base. So I think we're going to see two types of play and earn games emerging. Those that really want to spike it, get a lot of traction, short-lived, and those that would work for a very long time, but the earning mechanics aren't going to be as exciting as with some of the more short-lived games. And I think this is really where we can, proposition our value proposition again. That's why Acxyn is here, because we don't want investors to get burnt. We want them to know exactly, okay, this is the type of game it is. This is, its value. And now you can make a decision, whether you're a gamer or whether an investor. And if an investor, hears about this new Web3 game, it's giving out a lot of money for players to earn in a game, but it might not be sustainable. So with what we have is going to really be able to help them make that decision.
So we're almost at the end of this year. If you have to give like a quick look back on how this year has been for the sector at large, and how are you said that you're well connected with over 50 or almost 60 entrepreneurs in the gaming space. What was the larger narrative from entrepreneurs? I'm sure quite a few of them must still be recovering from what we saw the last year towards the end of last year. So how was the entire narrative as per you and the other entrepreneurs that you might have a word with?
So I think it's been an incredibly exciting year. Across Web 2 and Web 3, games have continued to maintain dominance. We've had AI really take main stage, and that has got a lot of people excited and what the possibilities are. A lot of people are working on how can we build more engaging games with it? Or like us, how can we build ways to understand the economic trajectory of games? Now, with a lot of the but at the same time, it's been a challenging year because uh, liquidity and the ability to fundraise for especially startups has been very difficult. So I think I'm mostly just impressed by the resilience, the dedication, and the love that a lot of our partners and game creators put into their intellectual property. And I think that's really something that my and our narrative has been at Acxyn. We want to help get those games that have that love, that those metrics. We want to help them get recognized and stand out, even though they might be smaller. There is a solid following, there's a solid intellectual property behind it, and they deserve to be seen and heard and invested in. And so, yeah, the narrative has been, we're excited, but we love what we do, and we're going to continue doing it, and we're going to try to do the best we can for our fans and followers. Yeah.
your top predictions, or let's not call it predictions, let's just call it expectations from next year. And you also did briefly mention that how fundings were affected throughout this year. Would it get better? How would institutional investment into the gaming space look like in the coming year? And of course, your top expectations.
Well, we definitely hope to play a very big role in that. We're going to be releasing our product very soon, so investors will be able to try it out. They'll be able to check our database of games that we've already got onto the platform. We've got around 20,000 games right now that we have valued. So, what are the top predictions for next year? I think we're going to definitely see a resurgence, and in especially Web3, a lot of these builders for Web3, they've had time to build their games, they've had time to learn what went wrong last time and position it slightly differently this time. So I think we're going to continue to see very heightened interest in Web3 gaming, in GameFi. For next year overall, I think I'm very positive. I'm really looking forward to the next year and what it brings. I believe funding will get easier as well for most companies. I think crypto is on a good trajectory right now. So yeah, knock on wood. But I'm very much looking forward to next year. Feeling very
Yeah.
positive. Yeah.
And we're looking forward to certain big updates from Acxyn.
I'll keep you posted, Varuni.
Absolutely. And
Been
before
great.
we wrap this episode up, John, I have been meaning to ask this since the very beginning. How did you come up with the name Acxyn? It's a rather interesting name. And what was the
Oh,
idea behind
no, I love that question. Okay. It's because Acxyn is inspired by a mathematical formula, and that's essentially what our company comes down to. You know, we're looking at these games, and math can tell a beautiful story, and it's a story in the numbers that can be verified. And when we first founded Acxyn, my co-founders and myself, you know, that's really what we set out to do, and we felt that at the time, the formula we came across, it was so simple, it was so elegant. It also told us a story of kind of going from 0 to 1. And that's what we wanted to do with Acxyn. We wanted to create something new. We wanted to go from 0 to 1. And that's what we've been doing.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, John, for the insightful, really insightful session. And we'd love to
Thank
have
you,
you back
Varuni.
our show again. For anyone who's missed out a part of this episode, you can catch it on YouTube or any of our other social media platforms. Big shout out to John for joining us today. And happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you so much, Varuni. Pleasure being on
Thank you.
the stream.
Pleasure was all ours.
Bye, guys.
Bye bye.